wanted to talk about, just cover a little bit of the basics of the loan application process, and kind of hopefully give you some tools and things to think about during that process. There's kind of a wide variety, not just with FNB, but with all banks, of sort of what products are out there. So kind of wanted to focus on just the lending aspect. As small business owners, typically at some point during your career as a small business owner, whether it be at startup phase or expansion or whatever the case may be, most likely you're going to need funding source of some kind at some time. And so this just kind of gives you a little bit of the behind the scenes of what banks and what lenders look at, and maybe gives you some things to think about. So let's see, my clicker will work here. 5 C's of credit. This may be something that some of you have seen before, are familiar with, or heard of, but just kind of what these things are, and again, kind of seeing what's my lender thinking of when I'm going to him or her for a loan request. So capital, this is just how much of your own money or the business's money are you willing to inject into a project. If it's a startup, if it's an expansion, how much of that, how much cash are you willing to pledge as part of that project? Your capacity, sometimes referred to on the consumer side, people think of debt to income ratio, your terms like cash flow. This is that capacity. How does a dollar cash flow through your business? And how does that dollar at the end of the day, is there a surplus to repay your debts, including the debt or the loan request that you have the request out there for? So capacity is a crucial piece of the 5 C's. Collateral, most of us are familiar with what the terminology means and what that is, but it's a secondary source. To the bank, it is a secondary source of repayment. Capacity is, or your cash flow again, is what your primary source of, the revenue from the business to service the debt. But what's the worst case scenario? In a worst case scenario, what are you willing to pledge as collateral for your loan request? Conditions are just your general, just as it says, what your general economic conditions are, both locally on a broader range. Think about things that are out there that can directly impact your industry or your business specifically. And I'll mention a little bit about a business plan, and all these things that can be mentioned and addressed in a business plan. But as you're building out a business plan, if it is a startup or whatever the case may be, think about what conditions are out there that could directly impact you. And character is just simply, building trust with your lender, and that sort of goes both ways, lender to the business owner to lender, just over time building that trust and that relationship with your lender. So when you're in the loan application process, just some things to think of, or questions to expect from your lender, and these may seem very basic, and again, this is kind of very broad, and as I get through this, if folks say, I don't care about any of that stuff, I just want to show up and I need funding, just write me a check. That's fine. If you want a certain question or on a certain product, then I'm happy to answer that after the fact. But hopefully, again, this just kind of gives you the background of what the lender's thought process thought process is, and what the bank's standpoint is when reviewing credit. So. And you'd be surprised how some of these questions may seem very basic and think, well, no duh, Ike, that seems like a pretty basic question to ask, or the lender's going to ask. But you'd be surprised how often some simple things get missed that can create kinks and problems down the road. Number one, how much do you need? That seems like a pretty obvious answer. If you've got, like I need a $100,000 line of credit, think through that process to know. It's always better on the front side to make sure you have enough funding than going back later after the fact and saying, oops, forgot about XYZ, need additional funding. So think through that process, if you are looking at some financing needs, to make sure you're asking for the correct amount of money. And then, what are you going to do with the money? That's going to be a top question that any lender is going to ask you. Is it for an expansion? Is this a business purchase? Are you buying equipment that's going to generate additional income for your company that we need to factor into your cash flow? So think through that process too. When will you pay it back? Those prior two questions, what you're doing with it is going to determine what type of repayment term or amortization that you're most likely going to need to set up and structure. How will you pay it back? Again, going back to the cash flow, it's very important to understand how your company's cash flow works to know when lenders are saying, okay, how are we going to address these, and what type of payment structure can you handle? Understanding how you can pay back, how your business can pay back its debts is crucial here in understanding that cash flow. And then what if something goes wrong? That's something nobody likes to really talk about, but if there's a plan that doesn't work out, it happens. I can promise you that your lender is most likely going to think through those things, so it's better to address that on the front side and put it in a business plan and say, here's what a backup plan is if things don't work out the way I expect it to. And I just mentioned down there, a good business plan, and Chris, you may mention some of this when you come up here, but a good business plan addresses all these things and encompasses all these things and helps to kind of steer you in the right direction when you're going and talking with banks. And then just finally, just a few other things to kind of think through and items to point out, and just reiterate again, preparing a business plan, know what to ask for, how much to ask for, and know what your answer is as far as how you're going to use those source of funds. But things to think through, when you're looking at financing needs, interest rates are certainly something that's very important to think of and factor into your business model and how your business is going to repay its debts. But it's not the only thing. Look at other aspects of the loan, closing costs, what are some of the conditions required by the lender, and to kind of segue in at the next, the loan commitment letter. This is something that I feel like could get utilized more, and business owners could, if you know to ask for that, your lender can provide it. Once a bank has approved your loan request, they can provide basically a breakdown of here's what your conditions, this is what your loan is going to look like when we sign the loan paperwork. So it's just kind of a preview, and it gets the lender and the borrower and the business owner on the same page, as everybody knows what to expect at closing and what we're signing. So, look for things I put in parentheses there, your closing costs, factor those in. Are there prepayment penalties if I pay this loan off early? Am I required to personally guarantee this debt, not only just the business itself? Are there covenants in there? Am I going to be restricted on things I can do in the future? Is the bank going to restrict me from doing certain things, or are they going to ask me to provide certain things down the road? So it's something to think about, especially on a significant amount of money. If you're looking at different loan options, ask for that loan commitment letter and review through it. And if you're not sure what certain things are, ask the questions and understand that. But and remember, borrowing is a two-way street. The chips aren't all on the bank side. Banks need to lend money to make money, and so realize that and think of that when you're in the loan request process, is that the banks need you, and they need small businesses to generate revenue. And then finally, and this may be more of kind of the background where I come from on a community bank side, lenders like myself, we may have a wide variety of different business owners that we deal with in different businesses. So help your banker to understand your business, and shouldn't be I don't mean that as a chore that you need to put, that's your responsibility, but just help your banker, take them to your business, have them come out to your business and understand how your business works. Community bankers like myself, we may have, like I said, we may have a wide variety. We're not the expert, you're the expert on your business, and so don't be afraid to help them understand your business and walk them through how your business operates. So again, if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to answer after the fact. This is just kind of the broad view of the loan application process. So let me know if you have questions.